And that's when my midwife said to me, if it feels like your butthole is going to explode, you're doing it right. Hello. My name is Lehua Collins. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I talk about all things faith and motherhood. So if that's up your alley, I would love if you stayed a while. So go ahead and subscribe. If a home birth sounds like something you're intrigued about, maybe you're pregnant right now. I'm pregnant again, by the way. Praise the Lord. So if you're pregnant, congratulations. If a home birth is something that you can see yourself doing, that you want to do, I hope that my experience either inspires you or helps you in any way. I do only have the experience of a home birth because that's the only thing we've done. So overall, I will say it was an amazing experience. I only had 1 3-hour traumatic portion. I'm just going to be so real. Like there's just the 3 hours out of the whole thing was traumatic, and I'll get more into that. But the Lord always comes through. Praise Jesus, because he truly carried me through this experience, and I'm just forever grateful for him. If you know yourself and you think you're going to be sensitive to any of this information, if you think it might scare you, I just want to put the disclaimer out there. Maybe you should not watch this video. So with all of that being said, let's get into it. It was just your ordinary Sunday. I'm just kidding. It was not an ordinary Sunday. On this day, I was 37 weeks pregnant. So this was 3 weeks before the due date of the baby. I had plans to go to one of my best friend's bachelorette dinners. And I figured, oh, okay, I'm not going on the cruise, because there was a whole cruise that all the girls were going to go to on the next day. Obviously, I was very pregnant and I could not do that, but I was joining them for the dinner. It's 3 weeks early. He's not going to come 3 weeks early. Mind you, we didn't even do any of the prep. We didn't wash any of his clothes, get anything organized. We were actually going to do that this week. I drive my very pregnant self to Long Beach. So we meet at my friend Lisa's hotel room. And we're just catching up. At that point I was feeling just kind of hot, which is nothing really abnormal, because in pregnancy, especially when you are very large and in charge, in the 3rd trimester, at least my experience, I was sweating a lot. I was hot. So it didn't feel abnormal to me. And then it's time to go to dinner. So she tells me, okay, the restaurant is a 15-minute walk. You think you'll be able to be okay with that? I say, yeah, we went to Disneyland last weekend. I walked like 15,000 steps, 15 minutes. I got this. So we start walking there, and that's when I slowly started to get cramps, which I thought, of course, we're Braxton Hicks, right? I'm like, oh, okay, just Braxton Hicks, whatever. Breathing through it. I was okay. I was just walking a little slower. It was fine. I remember some of my friends looked at me and said, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. It's just Braxton Hicks. I'm just getting a little bit of cramping. So we get to the restaurant, we sit down. My belly starts to get really, really hard, which does happen with Braxton Hicks. And if you don't know what Braxton Hicks are, by the way, it's basically this. I'm not a medical professional, okay? So I'm just giving you the summary of my understanding of it. It's your body's way of almost these practice contractions that are not near the level of intensity of actual contractions, but your belly will tense up, get kind of really stiff, and then it'll release. And that will happen as you get closer to your due date. And it was already kind of happening to me before this night. So during dinner, I just thought, oh, okay, I'm eating. I actually couldn't really eat a lot because of what was happening, aka I was going into labor. Now that I know, looking back at it. But then my belly started getting rock hard, like harder than normal. Like I was like I'd had a big bowling ball in there, and my face must have been expressing some kind of concern because two of my friends looked over and asked again, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I think, I think it's just the Braxton Hicks again. And I think I might just need to use the bathroom, but I'll just go to the bathroom at your hotel." So we finish up dinner. We take pictures together at the restaurant. Then we start walking back. And that is kind of when I had my first moment. I was still not thinking I was in labor, but it was odd because there was a point when we were walking back from the hotel or to the hotel, and there was something in the bushes, and I think we all thought it was a skunk or something like that. So there was a point where, the girls, we all kind of like did a little jump scatter because we thought it was a skunk. And I tried to run or jog or whatever you want to call it, and I couldn't. I just froze, kind of like a and I was just like, huh! And I froze, and it's like I couldn't run. And again, my friends looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" I said, yes, I'm fine. I think I just have to go number 2. So, which is actually what I thought, because my belly was still cramping like pretty intensely at this point. So we get to the hotel, and this is when things start to escalate kind of quickly, because I go to the bathroom thinking I have to, go number 2, and nothing comes out. I know this might be TMI for some of you, but I'm just telling you the full story, okay? So nothing comes out, and then I said, okay, that's very weird. Then I start bleeding. Now, at that point, I am a little bit nervous because I just saw blood, and I got nervous. And so I wasn't really scared or freaked out or anything. I was just confused. I had thought previously a couple weeks ago that my mucus plug had already come out. So I was just kind of confused on what was happening in that moment. So I'm sitting on the toilet. I'm texting 2 of my best friends that have had home births. I'm bleeding. I'm bleeding. It was really funny. No knock. They just come barging in to the bathroom. They look at my situation. And if I remember correctly, I think one of them had said, "Oh, I think you're going into labor." And I was in such denial, you guys. I thought, what do you mean? No. He's not supposed to come for 3 weeks. I have a work gig. I have a voiceover gig on Thursday. He can't come till Friday. And that's actually what I said. I text my husband. I say, I think I'm going into labor. I don't know. And I told him what was happening, in the toilet, all that. I said I was going to reach out to the midwife and the doula, which I did. And I sent pictures of the toilet to the midwife and the doula. The midwife, I think she texted me and said that she thought it was, that it looked like my mucus plug came out. Doesn't necessarily mean labor, but that's what she said. The doula actually called me. That is when I started getting contractions. I started getting the pain, the contractions, I believe when I was on the phone with her. So my friends had to take over. They were on the phone with the doula, communicating with the midwife via text. When I started having these contractions, my friend said, "Yeah, you're having this baby tonight." I said, "What?" I think they called my husband at that point too. They said, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to come get her." And they said, "No, there's no time for that. She's having contractions right now. So we are going to all get in her car and drive her home." So that's what we did. And we all got into my car, and it was really funny because the hotel that we were at was a DoubleTree. And I remember on the way in saying hi. On the way in to the hotel earlier, I was saying hi to the front desk, asking them for 2 cookies, one for me, one for the baby. And then a couple hours later, myself and all the girls are rushing out. We're waving at the front desk saying, she's in labor, she's gonna have the baby. And they were just like, oh my gosh. So it was pretty funny. So we get in the car. The contractions are getting more intense. One of my friends is in the back seat with me, pushing my hips together during every contraction just to try and help with the pain. We have the Caleb station on with the Christian music, which was really helping me because in between, it's crazy. In between each contraction, you go from having this like just pain, during the contraction, and then it stops. And you're just like, I was laughing in between because I'm like, this is crazy. How do I go from this crazy amount of pain to just no pain in like that? But the contractions were pretty close together. I can't remember how close together they were. I was like kind of already getting loopy by then. And my other friend who was sitting in the front seat, she is a nurse, and I just had so much, despite everything that was happening, I had so much peace and confidence in my heart because I knew, look, if the baby comes out in the car, my friend, she's got me, okay? She could catch this baby and everything will be fine. Like, I literally had no worries, and I was not fearful. At this point, I had no fear, no worries. Obviously, I was in pain in the contractions, but I couldn't believe that this was happening with all of my best friends with me. It was the best thing ever. The Lord really knew what I needed in this experience, and I was just so grateful. We get to the house, and I remember just I had on this maternity/nursing dress. It was not that expensive. It was from Amazon, but I remember it's the first time that I was wearing it, and I didn't want to get it dirty. I didn't want to bleed on it. So I remember just lifting my dress up because I didn't want anything to get on it. And I just didn't care. I was just getting out of the car and I walked out like that. I was actually wearing my friend's sister's clean, so don't get it twisted, bikini style underwear because the underwear I was wearing was not appropriate for the situation. It was just so hilarious. I'm just walking into the house and I say, "Hey babe," and this is my mother-in-law's house. So, as soon as my husband knew that, okay, this might be happening tonight, which he was actually in denial too, because we talked about it afterwards and he said, yeah, he told his mom, so she might be going to labor. I don't know. We should probably tidy up and clean, just in case. But even he was kind of in denial. Like, how is it this early, And so I see him and he said that I looked drunk, like I looked intoxicated, which that's how I felt. I felt very loopy because I was like, contraction, and then I would come back down to like, okay, I'm fine, yay, praise the Lord, singing gospel music. So we all go in the house. It's obviously me, my husband, myself, my mother-in-law is there. At that point, my husband had taken the dogs over to our place. We had planned to do the birth at my mother-in-law's house because of the house situation, and it was sentimental to my husband too because he grew up, in the house. Our loft was just smaller and probably just not the best situation for a home birth because we didn't have a huge living room. So he took the dogs there just so that it would be less hectic. So they slept there, and then he got them in the morning after the baby came out. But it was us and my friends, 3 of my best friends, like my core 3 best friends there, and one of my friend's sisters who I knew her for so long. She's like family to me too. So it was real. So it was 4 of them. I had been using the piano bench and an exercise mat, like leaning on it to do contractions. My husband and one of my friends, Michaela, they were alternating, helping me with the hip pressing. You know, it helps with the pain, at least makes it a little bit less painful. And then I had this brilliant idea that I thought, since the midwife wasn't there yet, and I just felt like, oh, maybe if I'm in water, I'll feel better. So we went into the tub, which was kind of a narrow, small tub. So I think if it was a bigger tub, it would have felt more comfortable for me, because it was like my husband was in there behind me, you know, trying to apply the pressure to my hips, but it was just like a narrow, kind of a little claustrophobic for us in there, and with him trying to do that. So at that point, when we were in the tub, the midwife arrived. She saw the whole circus there and was probably thinking, what the heck? But she came to the tub, asked how I'm doing. I was just felt so out of it by then. I'm just like, I don't know. She asks me, she wanted to do a cervical check. And I remember asking, okay, she has a glove on her hand, and I said, well, okay, because at this point I had never had any cervical checks. She said, well, I have to go in there and check, you know, how dilated you are. And I was just, probably the intensity of the contractions, I just could not imagine a hand up there. And I said, no. I can't do that right now. I can't do that right now. I just can't. And she said, okay. So we get out of the tub because it's becoming uncomfortable, right? We get out of the tub, we move. I think I was squatting by the toilet for a little bit to see if like the squat motion was better, which it kind of did feel. I mean, it didn't feel any better, really. What am I saying? So then we moved from that back to the living room. At this point, I said, can we get the futon mattress, because my knees were hurting on the exercise mat, because mind you, I am heavy. So we put the futon down, we put, you know, basically dog pee pads on top of the futon mattress for fluids. I think it was at this point where I was trying different positions, you know, going on my back, going on my side. I thought my side was going to be more comfortable. It was not. I think it was like the worst, actually. I tried being on all fours. It didn't really help. So I kind of just I was laying down, I think. And at this point, I remember my hearing being just so, it was like like I had super ears. I could literally hear everything, every giggle, every laugh, which, by the way, I did not like laughter. I did not like it. I don't know why. When I would hear a giggle or laugh, it would like I didn't like it. I remember at one point there was, you know, I'm sure people were just laughing about something. And then my husband did a little giggle and he was right next to me. And I said, can you please stop laughing? That's just how much laughter was affecting me. And I also heard my friend say, talk to my mother-in-law and say, Auntie Debbie, what are you doing? And she said, do you want some of, like, who is Dad's really nice, expensive whiskey? Do you want some shots? Because I need a shot. I need to take the edge off. And I'm hearing all of this, having contractions, you know? And at that point, the contractions are getting way worse, way more intense. If you were to ask me in that moment if I wanted an epidural, I would have said yes. I will not lie, because before my first birth experience, I was very against epidurals. I didn't judge other people for getting them, but I just personally, I was really close-minded, I had read some stuff where, and who knows what is true on the internet. It's just hard to tell these days, but I read somewhere that it could have negative effects on the baby. And I remember when I read that, I said, oh my gosh, I will never get an epidural. I don't want to risk that, But let me tell you, I don't want to scare you if you haven't given birth yet, because I'm sure because I was, before all of this, I was in this kind of delusional, okay, I don't want to call it delusional, but in this headspace of maybe I will be the exception and I'll have one of those pain-free births. Yeah, no. This is not what happened. I was in so much pain. So yeah, but at a home birth, you can't get an epidural. It's just not an option. So I obviously did not have one and was just feeling everything. So at that point, I think the doula did arrive at some point during that time also, which was amazing. She really helped me emotionally, along with my husband, of course. By this point, the midwife, I think she asked me to do a cervical check. I don't remember. My brain was like, but she did a cervical check, and I was fully dilated. And mind you, I think we were at dinner, like we were leaving dinner at 8 p.m. This was about 8, 9, 10, 11. All of this happened within 3 or 4 hours. Yeah, I think closer to 4 hours, because my total labor really was only 7 to 8 hours, around there. And so it was we were like about 4 hours in, and maybe 3.5, 4 hours in, and she asked me, do you want me to break your water? I remember thinking, I don't know. I asked her, is it safe? And like, obviously she's not going to do anything that's not safe, but my brain had to ask that question. So she says, well, do you want the baby to come out sooner rather than later? And I said, yeah. So she manually breaks my water. It didn't hurt. It didn't hurt at all. It just was felt like a little pop. And I could feel the liquid coming out. And at that point, she said, she was asking me if I had any urge to push. She actually had asked me before she broke my water if I felt the urge to push, which at that time I didn't. And that is why she said, okay, it might be because you have this big old bag, and then, and that's why she manually broke it. After she broke my water, I think that's when I started to feel, when they say urge to push, it's more like feeling like you have to, you have to take a giant poop. Like, it doesn't even feel like a baby trying to come out of your vagina. It feels like a massive turd trying to come out of your butthole. I am just being so honest, because nobody said that to me, and nobody talks about that. Nobody says that birth does not feel like a baby coming out of the V. It just feels like the other end. And I remember telling her, I just feel like I have to take a giant poop. And that's when my midwife said to me, if it feels like your butthole is going to explode, you're doing it right. And I said, okay, good, because that is precisely what it feels like. Actually, exact description of what it feels like right there. So then we come into a situation where apparently the breathing technique of regular contractions versus pushing, because now she was telling me I'm ready to push because I felt like my butthole was going to explode. Mind you, I had this I had this whole vision, you guys, of, oh, I'm going to be in the water. We didn't even get the, in our home birth kit, we had, you know, everything prepared for the tub and everything. And we didn't even open the tub or get it ready. So the tub was not out. I was literally on the futon mattress. So the breathing is totally different. And I'm learning this all on the fly in the moment, which is why this is also another thing I wish that I would have known previously. That the breathing during a contraction, she was encouraging me that it can be audible, but it has to be a low situation. So it's like, you know, you're, it's like kind of a creepy sound, to be honest with you, because, you know, it's just like a, let me try and do it. It's just a weird sound, okay? It's not cute at all. Which also reminds me something I thought I wanted during birth, because I always want to document. I thought I wanted a birth videographer and a birth photographer, and let me tell you, okay, maybe the birth photographer, maybe I would have been open to that, but no, because even then it's a stranger, and if anything, like for this baby, for our next baby, I wouldn't mind, you know, maybe if my mom's taking pictures or photos, or, you know, just for us, and maybe some videos. But in the, like, looking back, I was thinking, oh my gosh, like the fact that I thought I wanted, you know, one, potentially two strangers there documenting, like, it was just, I couldn't imagine it. Now I'm just like, absolutely not. And nothing against that line of work. It just was not for me in this experience. So now, instead of the audible low breath, it is the pushing breath. Is supposed to be, I was instructed by my midwife to feel an exhale of like a bearing down, a non-audible bearing down feeling. I did not know what that meant at all, nor did I practice this whatsoever. So that is definitely something that I am going to do differently this time, is really train and practice the breaths. I really feel like that was one of the reasons why I had such a hard time pushing, because I was pushing. He would kind of come out, and my husband would say, oh, I can kind of see his head. But then I couldn't do it. He would come back in. Like, it was just, the pushing was the only part that I started to get fearful, and doubt myself. Like, I couldn't do it. I was getting really tired also. And another funny side note is, I had this whole plan of, I put together with my husband, you know, these 2 Christian playlists for the birth. I said, okay, I have my Spotify, and I'm going to have one with lyrics and then one with no lyrics in case I want just instrumental. Well, everything happened so fast, so none of that happened. We had my mother-in-law's Alexa playing Christian music, so it was amazing. But it was funny because you would hear, you know, gospel music, and then the commercials were literally about a serial killer podcast. So we probably heard, and it was the same commercial the entire labor. So just imagine you were trying to birth your child, and you have, you know, you're like, okay, come on, Holy Spirit. You want you have your music going. And then every so often, you hear a serial killer podcast commercial. So I would hear, and I didn't have the energy or the thought to tell somebody, can you please turn that off or whatever? Because maybe I was laughing inside about it. I don't know. But I just remember hearing so-and-so violently slaughtered by a murderer, da-da-da-da-da. And mind you, I look like a murder scene. Like, I literally look like a murder scene. There's probably blood everywhere. And so that, we kind of laugh about that now because it was kind of funny. But anyway, back to the pushing. So we're trying to push. I'm trying to push. I can't get him out. At this point, 2.5 hours, I think 2 hours and 45 minutes has gone by, and the midwife, the doula is really helping me. She's trying to, she's counting and like she's helping me breathing. She's helping me with my breath. My husband's there. I'm probably squeezing his hand, like about to break it off. I don't know. And the midwife says, okay, once we hit 3 hours of pushing, we might have to go to the hospital because you're having a hard time pushing him out. And at that point is when I was like really, I would say I was starting to freak out a little bit, because I remember I started crying. I turned to my husband and I looked at him and I said, what if I can't get him out? Like, what if I can't do it? And that was the first time I truly was doubting myself. And it was scary. It was really scary for me. And this is when Jesus comes to the rescue. The midwife, my doula, my husband. Oh, by the way, we politely asked my friends to leave once I started pushing. So the crowd wasn't there. I was so happy to have them in the beginning part of the labor, the contractions. Like, I wouldn't have it any other way. When I started to push, though, that's kind of when I had like just an intuitive feeling of like, okay, they need to leave, just because it was just too many people, even though it was people I love. My husband had asked them nicely to leave and they're like, no worries, no problem. So they had already left by then, by the time I started pushing. So midwife, doula, my husband, and my mother-in-law were left in the room. They started praying for me. They were praying, asking the Lord. I don't remember the prayer at all. I was just completely out of it. And I was just out of it. I just remember hearing them praying for me. They said a prayer, gave me some lemonade, because I was just like losing my juice at that point. I was like losing battery, getting very tired. Didn't have energy. So they gave me some lemonade. And the thought of having to move to go to the hospital to possibly have like the forceps or the vacuum thing, it just really terrified me. And I'm not trying to be offensive if that's how I think I was a forcep baby. Okay. I think my mom told me that because I was her first child, or her first birth. So she had a really hard time with me and they had to get me out with the forceps. Okay. So you have to do what you have to do, but I was mentally terrified of that. And so between the prayer, the lemonade, and just me like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to move. First of all, how can I get up? Like, I'm in so much pain and like delusional. How can I get up and go somewhere else? And within 15 minutes of the prayer, the lemonade, and me freaking out, his head came out. And you guys, I can't even describe to you the feeling of, oh my gosh, okay, his head is out. It was like, praise God, he's coming out. I can do this. So he did come out in a total of 3 pushes. So that push, his head came out. I could feel it. The second push was his shoulders, which was like, I think that is when I did tear, because I ended up getting 2 tears. I think it was, who knows, maybe his head or shoulders, because that was like the widest part that I could feel myself stretching. And then the third push felt like an octopus coming out. That's the only way I can describe it. It was like his legs. So he's out. I am just like, I think I would describe my feeling at that point was just relief, like emotional relief, because I was so fearful that I couldn't get him out, that the fact that he was out, he started crying pretty much instantly, which also gave us peace of mind, right? I did have a short umbilical cord with him, so when he came out, the plan was that my husband was going to catch him, but everything happened so fast, and I think the midwife just grabbed him and they were trying to put him on my chest, but the cord was too short, so he couldn't reach. So what had to happen was she handed the baby over to my husband, and so my husband was holding and was holding him. He was crying, and I was just like looking still out of it. You guys, I was still out of it. You know how like some moms say like as soon as the baby comes out, they're like instantly they can like they have it together and they feel this pure bliss. I was not like that, in a sense where I was still very like I was processing what just happened, and I was just so grateful that he was out. But I would not describe my feeling as pure bliss. Like, I don't mean for that to sound terrible, because obviously I was so like, I don't know how to explain it. I was so grateful that he was out, but I was still like very traumatized by that portion that I was scared. So I was still processing, right? Then we did the delay cord cutting. As soon as the umbilical cord turned, I think it turns gray when, everything is settled. Then I can't believe I don't remember this. I think my husband cut the umbilical cord. And then at that point, they gave the baby to me, and I could put little Julian on my chest. And oh my gosh, it was just like, I don't know how to even describe it. It was just like a thank you, Jesus, for getting him out, for helping me. And I was still out of it, you guys. I was still like, I really don't know how to describe how I was feeling, because I was just praise Jesus that he is okay and he's out and I'm holding him. And he was so tiny. He ended up being, he seemed really tiny, but he was like an average weight, 7 pounds, 5 ounces, because she weighed him later. But then the placenta has to come out, and I was expecting this to be painful. I don't know, my brain just thought it was going to be painful, and it wasn't. Came out pretty smoothly. I did choose to do the placenta encapsulation, so the midwife didn't end up taking my placenta with her, and I believe she uses a third party to dry encapsulate the placenta. So that's what we did, and I can talk more about that maybe in a postpartum video. This is when I realized that my god sister had been home the whole time. I did not know this, because at the time she was living with my mother-in-law, and she was in her room the whole time, and she comes out and I'm just already in shock, okay? But I'm just thinking, you were here the whole time? I am glad I did not know she was there, because I feel like it would have just given me more anxiety. So I'm glad I didn't know. And so she comes out, and that's also the point where the midwife told me, okay, you have 2 tears. They weren't crazy major tears, but they weren't little tiny minor tears either. So she had to stitch me up. And I said, okay, is this gonna hurt? And she says, well, I'm gonna numb you. And I say, okay. She gets out this giant needle, and I say, where is that going? And she says, well, I have to numb you. And you guys, I am just terrified. I am like, oh my gosh. My downstairs has already gone through so much. I could not imagine just a giant needle poking wherever it needs to poke. But what am I going to do, right? She has to numb it and she has to stitch it. So I'm like death gripping my husband's hand, and the doula too at that point. And I remember it definitely hurt. I don't think it was as bad as I was expecting, but that's because the pain I had just went through was probably 1,000 times worse than the needle. But it did hurt. but then I was numb, so I didn't feel when she was stitching me up. I did end up getting very bad pelvic floor trauma from this birth. I will talk about that in a separate video because that needs a whole video in itself. I'm actually in the midst of therapy, pelvic floor therapy right now. But now it was time to take a shower. So what we loved about just doing the home birth was we were already at home, you know, we didn't have to worry about leaving the hospital. They said, okay, I can go take a shower and just kind of clean up. So the doula helped me. I went in the shower. The doula was helping me. You know, I actually, this is hilarious. I did my full skincare routine. Okay. I was like, okay, I need my cleanser. I washed my face. Like I need my toner, my serum, my lotion, my face cream. Like I did the whole thing. So I felt amazing. After that shower, I felt amazing. Midwife and the doula did clean everything up. So that was really great. They cleaned up, you know, I mean, the futon mattress had to go in the trash. Let's be real, along with probably all the destroyed towels. So those were in the trash, but they cleaned everything up. She cleaned the baby and, you know, weighed him, measured him. So first the midwife tells me, okay, now he needs a diaper. So he needs a diaper and some clothes. Do you want to put the diaper on him? And I remember I am still out of it at this point, even after the shower, you know, and I'm like, I don't know how to do it. Can you show me? So she shows us how to put a diaper on a baby. Like I said, we didn't have time to wash any of his clothes. And I say, oh my gosh, like we don't have anything washed. Do you think it's going to be safe to put the onesie on? We didn't wash it. We didn't have time. And she said, no, he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine, you know, because we wanted to put clothes on him. So we put a cotton onesie on him. And now it was time to try and get him to latch. Well, you guys, I just assumed, right, that every baby just latches perfectly. Like I'm going to have all this milk and I'm going to breastfeed for however long I want to breastfeed. No. My baby did not latch. I wasn't freaked out at the time because I thought, okay, maybe it'll just take him a couple tries. But the midwife was there and she was trying to get him to latch onto me and help me. But he wouldn't. Like, I don't know if he had like a hard time. And I know it's a group effort, right? It's a team effort. But she was there helping me and we just couldn't get him on. So she told me to get a nipple shield because sometimes if they have a hard time finding the nipple, you know, it's the nipple shield will kind of help them at least in the beginning. And it's tricky, it's tough because I ended up using the nipple shield for months. I think at least 3 months, I think, maybe 4 months. And I believe it truly affected my milk supply. So, but you know, what else was I going to do? Like he was not latching. Maybe I could have tried a couple more times, but the concern was this baby needed to eat. She told me the baby, he needs breast milk within 24 hours of birth, or he needs to eat, you know. She said, okay, go ahead and take a nap. I know you're all exhausted, but you need to go get the nipple shield so he can latch on and so you can start nursing him. We actually Amazoned the nipple shield. He did latch with the nipple shield. I'm going to do a whole video on my breastfeeding experience because my gosh, that's a whole nother thing of its own. But that pretty much sums up the home birth experience. Obviously you have to do other things like, you know, there's the birth certificate, the social security number. Let me know if you guys want videos on that because we did do all of that because it is a little bit different. I know that in the hospital situations, they do, I think, a little bit more for you regarding some administrative stuff. Overall, an amazing experience, except for that one period where I was really scared. I hope you enjoyed this video. If this video did help you, please give it a like. It really does help me out. If you have any questions at all, put them in the comments. And again, if you're watching this pregnant, God bless you and your baby and your family. And I just pray blessings over you, that you have an amazing pregnancy and birth experience. As mothers, we truly are doing the Lord's works. That's a constant reminder for myself, and I hope for you too. And the Lord is always our strength. So even in the hardest of times, He is our strength. Thank you so much, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.